Why is the archive so important? Not just, as I said, to accumulate works, but to basically provide it for further research. We're constantly emphasizing that archive is there not just to be, not for some romantic idea of the future generation having access to this, because they will not be able to watch it if we don't equip them with ways of understanding, of researching, of talking about this. And today I will present one interest of mine, which was spurred actually by also one artist connected to the archive, Marko Košnik, and he's been really thrilled about what Netočka Nezvanova was doing in the late 1990s on the internet, and what later on she did until like 2001 or 2002, I'm not really sure because I wasn't around on those web pages and discussions at the time, but usually it was IRC where everything was, all these discussions were in place. So basically I will talk about what is the importance of women behaving badly on the internet, and what does it mean, and what does it bring forward, and what sort of identity does it give it, and why is it so empowering. I will speak about the cases of, as I mentioned, Netočka Nezvanova, but firstly I will kind of present the work by Marianne Breeze, or as called alias Mez Breeze, and she's a net poetrist, one of the earlier, who had developed also her own language. And why this is so important is because she found a way not to speak in linear sense, but actually to hyperlink her own language constantly with brackets, with using certain things that we know from HTML coding or other ways of Java coding. I think she had used mostly Java coding. And she's been very kind of a disturbing element, speaking always in this hyperlinked poetic language. So the creating of your own language is one point, but then how to behave is another point, and that is where Netočka Nezvanova actually comes in place. And as we know, Netočka Nezvanova means non-point, no name, something that you cannot point and cannot call. And it's basically taken from a novel by Dostoevsky, which was written in the 19th century, and it's one of the really good examples of very straightforward and kind of nice writing about discrimination of lesbians very early on, because Netočka fell in love with one richer girl, Katja, and when her parents had kind of sensed this romantic relationship with them, they immediately moved away from the town into a bigger city. But the point with Netočka on the internet was actually that in this sense where Western world was in the 90s all about communication, we have all this positive idea how internet is going to revitalize society, how everything's going to be so nice and we're so kind to each other. She was slagging on the internet, saying to everyone, you know, go fuck yourself, you know, stop with your positive ideas, you know, do something. She was really vulgar at the time and producing kind of disturbance in this utopian, idealistic, really nice, let's talk and stream and do creative stuff thing. So the Westerners really didn't quite get her, and that's why she was so emancipatory, because she was not only someone who had been performing the position of women, of fighters, of female struggle. She was also like on empowering women, empowering lesbians, empowering Eastern art positions against Western. So it was all these dichotomies built up in a very vulgar attacks on these chat rooms. Later on it was discussed of the identity of Netochka Nezvanova, because still no one for a fact knows who that is, whether that is a collective, a male, a female. The best guess now is that it's actually Rebecca Wilson, who had been living here around somewhere in Yugoslavia or Austria, and somewhere in this region. She's from New Zealand and otherwise is a composer of contemporary music. And then also later on in this sense of misbehavior, I will speak of the performances of Gazira Babeli, which had come to life in 2006 in Second Life, also really misbehaving badly, coding all around and doing really impossible things to everyone. And probably at the last point I will try to open up a discussion also about, or a discussion that was brought forward by Slovenian artist Maja Smrekar, who has recently, she's also very disturbing sometimes too in that sense, that she's trying to put forward another reading of history or another reading of how the female is presented. So she has done in this, kind of the pervert's guide to, not really inspired, but in this sense as the pervert's guide to cinema is done in a male way, her history of the future with hyperlinked interface of the sci-fi film production over the decades, explaining each decade, standing point and geopolitics. She had presented a sort of a female reading of the sci-fi fiction.
You work on the radio student. You have how do you say?
Emission.
Emission, yes. You have this emission which is named Sector J, where you deal with feminist art for quite some time now, and it's completely like different media, and this public radio really opens some other possibilities of spreading feminist ideas maybe, and knowledge about feminist art, a bit different than the exhibition spaces, we can say. So maybe you can tell us something about your experience in working in this emission. And
so when you say about the media practices, when I said that I deal with media, I did not mean mass media, I meant new media art. So in new media art field, I would work with Ljubljana Laboratory for Digital Media Laboratory, and Axioma Center for Art. But for the emission, I've been working with radio student for a long time, and I find it actually not only on the radio student, but also Dnevnik Daily, for which I have been working for also a number of years, that I have been always able to put forward and to suggest feminist topics to be published, and they were never rejected, and the editors were always very welcoming and very interested to publish, and never corrected any of the positions. So I'm quite satisfied so far with Slovenian mass media in that respect, but I've heard quite a number of other information that in the late year a lot of people had been censored for being explicitly lesbian or explicitly feminist. So I have been passed on this Sector J, which means Sector W, meaning women, or maybe sector F for female or something. So I've been passed on this emission by Yasmina Yarand, who had organized it for, I think, a good 3 years. And I've been working on it for 3 years as well. Now, recently, Teja Hvala had joined me, and I'm very happy about that, because it's quite some work, although it's only once a month, but it almost lasts an hour or a little bit less. And what I would strive to do, because I'm so connected to art and culture mostly, but I think that the very pervasive questions of women are actually addressed on a different level, because art is just one intellectual offspring or aesthetic offspring of the same problem, but the problem which is tackled by every and each woman is actually based in social security. So I would really address politics and social security in the emission a lot. I strive to do that as much as possible, though I'm always intrigued by, women artists, women scientists, and talk to them and give them space. But still, nevertheless, I would like to address some of the politics concerning women, being it the family law, the law of the family security, or the question of the right to adopt children by single women, and so on and so forth. There are many, many very discriminatory, I would say, situations that women find themselves in. Recently, I've worked for a number of emissions on the violence against women, being it psychological and physical violence on workspaces, mobbing, dealing with their partner's abuse, how are they able to emancipate, what's the situation of their possibility of economic emancipation. I found out that mostly women are manipulated by their partners and the society, that they can't live alone, while in fact financially there would be only 20% of the abused women, which is 50% of all Slovenian women, are in one time of their life subject to abuse by their personal partners, being mentally or physically, which is a very high percentage. So the fact is, what I would like to bring forward is that most of these women, if the society, the surrounding society would give them the moral backup that they can emancipate, they would be able to by all objective means. So that's one of the points that I'd like to deal with in the emission. But from the point of view of who's the consumer of my emission, I don't know, it's on Saturday afternoon. I'd imagine that a lot of people have their radios tuned on. I have a couple of fans and a couple of people who don't think I'm doing a good job, but that's like really, that's usual, and that's what you are used to if you work in the mass media. But I think that according to the visits to the webpage, which are an indication of some sort, we have quite a number of listeners.